What's going on, guys? So Donald fucking Trump just did something that nobody else had the balls to do. The Trump administration quietly changed the definition of domestic violence, and we have no idea what for. Without fanfare or even the Department of Justice's Office on Violence Against Women made significant changes to its definition of domestic violence in April. The Obama-era definition was expansive, vetted by experts including the National Center for Victims of Crimes and the National Domestic Violence Hotline, both are run by feminists. The Trump administration's definition is substantially more limited and less informed, effectively denying the experiences of abuse by attempting to cast domestic violence as an exclusively criminal concern. Well, I thought it was a criminal thing. I thought if you abuse someone in the home physically and violently, that's a criminal thing. Oh, but wait, so that's actually what he's trying to do. He's trying to make it so it's just physical things, right? Because let's have a look at the definition of violence, shall we? So when we talk about domestic violence, let's be very clear. So first, let's define domestic. Now, I know that most of us know domestic, but let's define it clearly. Existing or occurring inside a particular country. Okay, so that's not relevant. Relating to the running of a home or to family relations. All right, so it's relating to the family and relating to the home. Let's look at violence. Behavior involving physical force intended to hurt, damage, or kill someone or something. So basically domestic violence is behaviors that happen in the home or in the family that involve physical force intended to hurt, damage, or kill someone or something. Let's just think about that for a second, right? And now I'm going to go back to reading this article, now that we've clarified that, because it's actually a very, very important thing. The previous definition included critical components of the phenomenon that aka feminists trained in the Duluth model recognize as domestic abuse, a pattern of deliberate behavior, the dynamics of power and control. Duluth power and control wheel, anyone? And behaviors that encompass physical or sexual violence, as well as forms of emotional, economic, or psychological abuse. Feminist rhetoric, anyone? But in the Trump Justice Department, only harms that constitute a felony or misdemeanor crime may be called domestic violence. Well, that would make sense given that, you know, words actually have meaning. You know, God forbid we actually use words for their intended purpose rather than making up bullshit words to describe something just to make people feel more strongly about it. So, for example, a woman whose partner isolates her from her family and friends, monitors her every move, belittles and berates her, or denies her access to money to support herself and her children. You mean their children or her children? Yeah, that's what I thought. Is not a victim of domestic violence in the eyes of Trump's Department of Justice. This makes no sense for an office charged with funding. Funding? Yeah, that's something feminists love, isn't it? Funding and money. Because, you know, money gives you a lot of power and control over people. Right? Feminists always saying that men are the ones with the power and control, but yet it just seems funny that they're the ones that want all the cash. So it makes no sense for an office charged with funding and implementing solutions to the problem of domestic violence rather than merely prosecuting violent individual abusers. Isn't that what we would want to do? Prosecute individual abusers? You know, prosecute the people that are actually being physically violent? But no, we can't have that. We just have to believe all women. We have to throw funding at women, right? And we can't help men. We're not allowed to help men, because if we help men, then that means we acknowledge we can be victims too. And we can't have that, because if we acknowledge that men can be victims too, then that means we actually have to spend some of the money that the government gives us from taxpayers' pockets on men as well. And we don't want to do that. We only want to spend the money on women. Restoring non-physical violence to the definition of domestic violence is critical. So violence, by definition, is physical only. It's not non-physical. So non-physical violence is an oxymoron spouted by morons like this chick. Restoring non-physical violence to the definition of domestic violence is critical. Critical for who? Critical for feminist control freaks? Because that's what it sounds like to me. As the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports, over 1/3 of US women have experienced psychological aggression at the hands of an intimate partner. Yeah, because men have never ever suffered from psychological aggression at the hands of a woman. The woman going, yeah, okay. What's up, babe? Don't worry about it. You don't even care anyway. Does that sound familiar to you guys? Because it fucking sounds familiar as shit to me, right? Men are used to being having psychological aggression and psychological warfare used against us in even friendships with women. That's how women get their way, right? By fucking mind-fucking you without our consent. Is that mind rape? I think it is. Oh, that's right. We're men, so we can't be raped. Sorry, feminists. Experts have long recognized that the manipulative behaviors identified in the Obama-era definition as restricting a victim's liberty or freedom can cause greater harm and more lasting damage than physical harm. I know this from my experiences over a decade working with survivors of domestic violence. In nearly every case, the bruises and broken bones eventually heal, but the psychological scars can last a lifetime. So what you're saying is that all of the domestic violence cases you had were actually domestic violence, where they physically were hurt. Right? And that's a shitty thing to happen, and I wish that hadn't happened to any of those people. But those are victims of domestic violence. Those have been on the receiving end of violence that is forced physical aggression in a domestic setting, hence domestic violence. Trump has attempted to brand his administration as one of law and order, so shoehorning domestic violence into a criminal justice framework may seem to him like a sensible way to recast the issue. Yes, it would, wouldn't it? But it isn't. And how isn't it? The assumption that domestic violence must involve a criminal justice response demonstrates a myopic understanding of abuse. Many survivors, particularly those from minority or marginalized communities, intersectional feminism, anyone? Are reluctant to report domestic violence to law enforcement. Race, class, sexual orientation, and immigration status can significantly affect whether a survivor decides to seek outside intervention when suffering violence in the home. Race, class, sexual orientation, and immigration status. Sounds like a line out of a gender studies book to me. There we go. A call to the police may make a survivor less safe if, for example... Oh, fuck, I'm tired. Tired of feminist shit. If, for example, doing so intensifies the abuser's anger, or the arrest of a primary breadwinner renders her homeless. So primary breadwinner, does that mean that you're not making money? And if you are making money, couldn't you just go somewhere else and rent that? Just find somewhere cheap, even if it's not ideally what you would like right now? See, this is why we need to find solutions and not just complain and get daddy government to throw money and sympathy at anyone who says life's too hard because I'm lazy and I don't want to work for it. You know, life sucks sometimes. We've all worked for it at times. So, just saying. Some survivors do not report because they do not want their abusers to face criminal punishment or because they generally distrust law enforcement. For various reasons, many survivors therefore make an informed choice to not initiate a criminal case. A domestic violence relationship rarely begins with physical violence, much less violence that rises to the level of a crime. If you were punched on a first date, odds are there wouldn't be a second. Intimate partner abuse is insidious. Emotional and psychological abuse escalates to physical violence as an abuser's need and/or ability to exert power and control increases. In the United States today, more than half of female homicide victims are killed by an intimate partner. if we do not acknowledge the small things, yelling or screaming, name calling or controlling or monitoring communication and social media. Speaking of monitoring, controlling and monitoring communications and social media, did you hear about the guy the other day who was burned alive by his wife because he wouldn't give her the passcode to his phone? Yeah, that sounds to me like controlling or monitoring communication and social media, and also being, by definition, violent and killing an intimate partner. But hey, let's not talk about men, because if we talk about men, it might mean we might actually have to do something about helping men, and we can't do that because we need all the money for female victims and female victims only. It is too early to assess the full impact of the Trump administration's definitional change. The Office on Violence Against Women engages in a broad array of activities in its implementation of the Violence Against Women Act, you know, as opposed to the Violence Against People Act. Perhaps grants that support community efforts to combat domestic and sexual abuse will be restricted to agencies serving victims of crime, leaving survivors without critical resources, aka money. If Office for Violence Against Women's training, education, and technical assistance curriculum, aka methods of indoctrination, is revised to adhere to the new definition, those experiencing mere emotional, economic, or psychological harms may no longer be considered victims. It is further noteworthy that Office for Violence Against Women simultaneously altered the definition of sexual assault with the new definition containing a similar criminal justice focus. What is clear is that these seemingly semantic changes, even if not yet embodied in official law or policy, are part of a broader trend towards the devaluation of women by this administration and this president. Well, Natalie and Nanasi, you can go fuck yourself, because I actually think this is a fantastic move. And I'll tell you why. Because you know how before there was all of these, because there's still all this legislation in place under the Violence Against Women Act. It actually helps people who've been victims of, by definition, violence. It doesn't help people who were upset because their husband wouldn't let them spend money on shit. It doesn't help people, right, who felt upset because they got into a disagreement. It doesn't help people that simply decided, I've got a new boyfriend now, so I want to divorce my husband, but I want it to be really easy for me to do it, and I want to take my kids with me, and I want to get child support. Because now you can't just turn around and say, domestic violence. He emotionally abused me, so therefore I need money and support. Oh, and I need my kids, and I need child support, and legal fees to be paid for in the divorce separation. See how this works? And this is not what is not being allowed to happen anymore. Even YouTube's trying to censor my video. I'm 13 minutes and 23 seconds in, and I've had maybe one person pop into this stream for a few seconds and then pop back out. I've got no thumbs up on this video. And it's not because people wouldn't like this video. It's because YouTube's censoring it. Because they saw Trump. Right? Because I tried to do a video before that had Trump and domestic violence. And now I did another one with Trump and feminists. And all the SJWs at Google and YouTube hate Trump. And they love feminists. And they don't want them seeing the same sentence together. And they don't like the word domestic violence because they find anything that may be challenging to their fucking puppy dogs and kittens world harmful. Right? It's like, there was this one chick I knew, and because I told her that I didn't buy into all this feminist bullshit, she told me she felt physically unsafe while I was on the phone to her over an hour away. Like, physically unsafe? Really? This is how women have been indoctrinated. And the video I did yesterday talks about the mainstream media and the shameless indoctrination of women. I strongly suggest you guys all go and check it out. And have a look at the article in the link below, and have a look at the video that accompanies it. It's pretty heavy shit. Anyway, guys, this is great news. Great news. Because all these feminist organizations, that just put their hand out for hundreds of millions of dollars in funding every single year at the taxpayer's expense, just so they can hate men, right? Just so that they can give women a pass, an easy pass out of a relationship with all of the cash and prizes. It's not happening anymore. It's not going down like that anymore. And we're going to see the rise of this blowback against feminism. I've been calling it. I've been calling this since the start of 2019. All right? I've been calling it. Because the Minister for Prevention of Domestic and Family Violence in Australia is resigning because she knew she was going to lose her seat at the next federal election, in my personal opinion. And she actually has a violently abusive daughter who's a drug and alcohol abuser and also is a domestic violence perpetrator against her partner. And this daughter even admitted it on TV, on the mainstream media, of all places. Like, if you're going to admit it, come on, do it somewhere a little more conspicuous than that. Inconspicuous than that. Like, seriously? And then Kelly O'Dwyer, the Minister for the Office for Women, she resigned from politics to be a stay-at-home mum. And all this time, here we were, believing her that women don't make different choices to men. Hashtag believe women, huh? And now Trump's just changed the definition of domestic violence to mean actual violence that happened in the home, not just something that upsets a feminist. And we've also seen a blowback from the UK Army against a chick getting a pussy pass for sexually abusing one of the people in her, what do they call it, battalion, or whatever they call it in the UK, like their unit. So she got a pussy pass. She got a little slap on the wrist. And her entire regiment got the shits and stood up against it. And yeah, went up against their superiors on it. So the cat's out of the bag. Feminism has been exposed for the hateful, lying ideology that it is underpinned by the Duluth model, which has been completely discredited, not only by numerous credible sources, but also by one of the three founders of the Duluth model herself, Ellen Pence. I'm going to put a link to the book in which she basically admits that the Duluth model is a fraud in the description below. Anyway, guys, if YouTube even lets you see this video, I'd love to know what you think of it. Make sure you smash the thumbs up, share this, get it trending, even though YouTube don't want it trending.